What's going on, guys? This is Dr. Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com. And today we're going to talk something special. I had somebody ask me about, hey, Matt, what did your diet look like when you weighed 315 pounds? Now, although when I weighed 315 pounds, I was a large man with a lot of muscle, it took a lot of calories to weigh that much for me. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 8,500 calories per day was what I had to take in, which was roughly about 1,500 calorie meals. So now to give you guys a little bit of a history lesson, when I was that big, I had the all-time squat world record of 1196.7 pounds in 2011. I'd also broke the world record total equipped, I believe 2 times. And I had an 844 bench, 800 plus deadlift. So I was a very well-rounded lifter of my era. Now, what did it take to weigh that? Well, the big trick before we get into any of that is, one, you have to be able to sleep a lot in order to get bigger. And that's where ATP Labs hit me around 2014 or so with Cinermag. So I started taking 4 to 5 capsules of Cinermag, and there was a handful of things that I found out it did for me as I got bigger. 1, I utilized carbohydrates better. 2, I slept intensively better, very vivid dreams. Body waked up way more recover, far less inflammation. And that came into account with Omega Pure. So back in the old days, it was hard to find a good fish oil that I'd have to get a script for that was super expensive, upwards of $100 to $125 a bottle from my doctor. Once ATP Labs came out with Omega Pure, which was basically the exact same thing, medical grade fish oil, I noticed that the inflammation stayed lower, even eating a high inflammatory diet. So don't kid yourself. To weigh 315 pounds, you have to carry some inflammation. And for equipped lifting, some inflammation is actually a good thing. What does this mean? Well, if your gear or your suit and your briefs and your bench shirt fit tighter, you're going to be able to store more kinetic energy, not only in the fabric, but in the muscle cells themselves. This is where people get completely mixed up in thinking, well, I'd like to look super jacked and be strong. Well, you can do that, but it is a very hard scientific and mathematical equation. For me, I always overate the amount of calories that I needed to ensure that I had an optimal amount of calories. If I didn't get at least 6,500 calories in per day, I could notice almost immediately within the next day that I was weaker and I didn't feel as strong. Now, for a lot of you guys watching this will not be a huge deterrent if you're not trying to be a world-class lifter. In all reality, in that time from the age of 24 to about 34, health was not on my my gauge as far as what I was trying to do, which was break all-time world records. Now, if I had to do over again, I would have done it at a lighter weight, far less body fat. But in my own personal world, as soon as I lost any type of size, and it wasn't mental, it was physical, my body went backwards. So what did my meals look like? Well, the first thing I would do is I would always try to sleep around 9 to 10 hours at night and 1 to 1.5, possibly 2 hours of naps in the afternoon. This is a lot of sleeping, but you're going to need that to slow down your metabolic rate. I was stuck at about 285 for about 1.5 to 2 years. No matter what I ate, no matter how much protein I took in, no matter how much supplementation I took, my body would not allow me to go over 285. Once I started listening to some other lifters that were far bigger than I started realizing that I wasn't getting enough sleep. I was sleeping about what people recommend, around 8 hours or so, and I started boosting it to 9. As I boosted my sleep up to 9 hours, I got up to 290. As I boosted it up to 10 hours, I got up to 300. As I started taking naps in the afternoons, I got somewhere in the range of between 310 and 316. Topping out at the most I ever weighed was 317. Which again, at 6'1" is still a large man. But the point being is, a lot of times your size is going to be heavily deterred on your sleep, meaning that your sleeping habits are going to be a huge concern when you're trying to gain size. Now, what did my meals look like? Well, I'd wake up in the morning and I would try to get about 40 grams of protein in right when I woke up. This would be in the constitution of somewhere between 6 and 8 eggs. Then I would have anywhere from some good fats like sausage, bacon. I would cook my eggs in grass-fed butter. And then I would eat usually 2 to 3 pieces of sourdough toast, a lot of times with 100% fruit natural jelly. Not because I thought it was more healthy, just because I liked the taste of it better. That was my breakfast. So every 3 hours, I was eating roughly the same amount of food. So I would go and get filet, and then I would do fried rice instead of steamed rice. And then I would get a ton of vegetables. That would be my first lunch. And then second lunch, I would have anywhere from 15 to 20 ounces of steak or chicken. And then I would eat somewhere in the neighborhood of, one of my biggest things was, looking back at it now, which was crazy, is I would eat one entire box of macaroni and cheese or shells and cheese with that protein. And for me, it was just a taste thing. I could eat it no matter if I wasn't really hungry. Because you got to remember, I had to do this for 5 or 6 years in order to get it the biggest I got. And again, my goal was to be the strongest person I could be. I wasn't necessarily worked on aesthetics, or I wasn't trying to be as healthy as I possibly could. So that was a huge thing for me, was the mac and cheese or shells and cheese, which I still use as a cheat meal today. So I would add that, and then my third or early dinner would usually be somewhere around the lines of a protein shake. I'd usually ground a banana in it with a shitload of peanut butter because the calories were really high. So I'd get somewhere around a 1,500 calorie shake out of that. And then I would have another meal before I went to bed. And usually that would constitute of something pretty shitty. Honestly, it would be like pizza, hamburgers, anything that sounded good, because by this time I really didn't want to eat. So I was walking around constantly bloated and constantly having to digest food. For me personally, that's what it took for me to weigh 315 pounds. But I would say if you're trying to weigh in excess of 300, your caloric intake is probably going to have to be somewhere in 65 to 7,500 calories per day. You're going to need to sleep at least 9 or 10 hours a day to keep your metabolism low. And then you're also going to have to train really fucking hard in order to make sure that those calories are getting pushed into your muscle tissue. Remember that at that time, it wasn't uncommon for me to squat 1,000 pounds for 2 to 3, possibly even 4 or 5 reps. Bench pressing 585 for triples, deadlifting at my best 825 for a double in the gym. The point is I was putting a lot of work and a lot of stress on my body, which needed a lot of calories. Looking back at it now, I think I could have done it probably at about a 1,500 calorie deficit of where I was at. And I learned that towards the end of my career, around 2015 and 16, I started to do seminars with Charles Poliquin, and Poliquin started showing me how to do, or how to get stronger and maintain a leaner body size. So at my end peak, I was sitting around 290, and I was probably sitting around 14 to 16% body fat, which was pretty lean for that size. So going back, I probably wouldn't have been as big, and I think that would have helped with health parameters, although my blood work and my health now are pretty good, facing the fact that I'm 45 and was a professional powerlifter for so long. So what are some key takeaways from this video? Well, pretty simple. 1, weight gain is heavily reliant on sleep. One of the new supplements that ATP Labs has come out with is called Yin Reserve. Now, to me, Yin Reserve is like Center Mag on steroids. Yin Reserve will actually help you sleep deeper, will help slow the metabolism down, and help you uptake the massive amount of calories you're trying to take in to build more muscle tissue and size. Do I think that you can gain muscle in a caloric deficit? The answer is yes, but the mathematical calculation of that has to be so constant that it's nearly impossible. Meaning, if you're weighing your food every time you eat and you know exactly to the gram of how many fats, carbs, and proteins you're taking in, you probably can gain muscle in a slight caloric deficit up to a point. Once you hit around 12% body fat, in my opinion, your body's going to start regulating the amount of muscle tissue it's going to allow you to put on. So my ideal body fat percentage to put on key muscle mass is going to sit between 16 and 20% body fat in order for you to put on maximal muscle. You know, you have to think about it like a drag car. If you're setting up at the line at a quarter mile and you only have a half a tank of fuel, when you launch it, that engine is going to shut down because the fuel is going to slosh out of the side of the tank, and then you're going to starve the fuel pump, and then the engine's going to decrease or not have any power or cut off. And I feel that that's very similar with the body. If you're not carrying a little bit of excessive caloric intake, the body is not going to be necessarily in an anabolic window that I feel most people and most guys are looking to do. So again, what's the biggest thing? Sleep and excessive calories for muscle mass gain. So this is Dr. Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com. Talk to you guys later.